it took moving 1,000 miles away to finally feel comfortable enough to tell all of you guys this story. This happened just before my senior year of high school over a period of 3 weeks in the summer. I was 17 years old, drug-free and sober. At the most, I took Advil for headaches every now and then, but that was it. I just want to assure you guys that I was not on any mind-altering substances or long-term medication that could affect my cognitive ability. During the summer, my curfew was 11 p.m. and this occurred while driving home from my, at the time, boyfriend's house, which took roughly 15 minutes, so let's say about 10:45 at night. I was also full of energy at this age and a night owl, so I was not even remotely tired. In fact, I was hyped up with the warm summer nighttime breeze, car windows down, just singing along to the radio. So, I took a shortcut through back roads to avoid going into the tiny city with its jerk cops. Also, one of the roads I took was super straight and flat, so I could really speed, and that feels great when you're a teenager. But right before that road, I had to take 2 very close turns to get onto it. First, I'd take a right turn that was no more than 90 degrees, almost back the way I came. Then, in exactly half a mile, I would turn left onto the long straight road where I could finally put the gas pedal down. Since it was only half a mile, I normally didn't speed up that much because the small stretch of road was more like packed gravel and it would be a waste as I would have to slow down again to turn left onto the much better road where I could let loose. The tiny property on the inside corner of the left-hand turn is where all this went down too. A house had been recently built there, 2 stories with a detached garage, and it seemed odd how quickly it had been erected as we built our family house and it took us a year to finish it. I'll start at the beginning because I believe that this is all related. So, I'm just jamming to my music, the wind whipping through my car feels great and I'm relaxed in my very familiar drive home. I slow down to make my right turn onto the rough rural road, just bopping along when my lights illuminate something stunning sitting on the corner of the road. It's a wolf, a real wolf, and it's completely white. I know the difference in dog breeds, and this was definitely a wolf. I love watching dog competitions, wildlife documentaries, and have even met a 1/4 wolf in person. They look very different from domestic dogs. And this was a wolf. And it was amazing, and it was kind of blowing my mind a bit. So I slowed down even more while I turned down my music. And I'm getting a close look at it and notice that it's not minding me at all. It's just sitting there perfectly still on the corner of the road, just staring at the house. It was almost unblinking. Its ears didn't even flick towards me, and all of its attention was focused on this house. I was so close that I could have almost reached out of my window and brushed the fur off the back of its head. I was smiling and amazed, but my mind was already churning. It made no sense for a wolf to be behaving like that, even less for there to be a white wolf in rural North Alabama in the summer. I came to a complete stop behind it, marveling at its fur and presence, and I felt euphoric, like I had seen something rare and blessed. I couldn't stay though, and with a sigh, I said goodbye to the wolf and drove home in a better mood than ever. I got to see something special, and it filled me with emotions of joy and peace. So a week goes by, and I was driving home again, and I'd been taking extra care to keep an eye out for my wolfy buddy, hoping to see him again around that area. So I drove extra slow with my window down and radio off. And that was a horrible mistake. I was on the short road approaching the new little house, and then I saw the thing that, to this very day, makes me question my sanity and reality. It was crouched right before their mailbox, its limbs folded and pulled in tight with its hunched posture, yet its head was still taller than the mailbox. It was mottled green and black with undertones of blue, and it looked wet and kind of slimy all over. Its head was elongated, allowing for an extended maw full of razor-sharp teeth, and the upper half of its body looked emaciated, with barely more than a frog-like skin pulled over angular long bones, ropey muscles to hold it upright, and at the end of its grossly sketched arms were equally terrible long fingers. While its legs had bulk to them and looked equipped for running, it had back-facing knees and tipped-in raptor-like curved claws. It looked maybe 7 feet tall, maybe more, just folded up in this predator's posture, waiting for prey. And then there were its eyes. They were completely solid black and sunken. I still feel kind of sick thinking about its eyes, just looking at me. And then I realize that it is going to look at me. It's going to see me, and there's no avoiding this thing. Panic and terror swallowed me instantly, and I couldn't breathe, but I had to get my window up. I had to get my window up, or I'd be ripped by those teeth and torn with those claws, and blood would adorn the cabin of my car, and I'd become an unsolved mystery. I had a manual crank window, and fuck me, crank windows, they're the worst. The reason why I had them in the first place was because I was scared of crashing into water and not being able to get out of my car, but now I realize that there are far worse things in the world than crashing into water. Its head was turning towards me, and I had let off the gas, but I was still getting closer to it, and it made me want to scream, but I had to get my window up first, and I was cranking it as hard as I could, and I started crying as I finally got the window closed, and then I put my gas pedal to the floor, and the gravel road be damned. I thought to myself that I'm not going to look at this thing when I pass it, and my tires finally found grip, and I started to lurch forward, finally passing it. But in my peripheral vision, I could see it starting to unfold its limbs, and it sent a terrible chill down my spine. I was mumbling through my tears at this point as I slid around the turn, flash-tailing for a moment before I rocketed down the road. I felt sick, and my heart was hammering, and I had snot and tears rolling down my face, and my hands were shaking. I glanced in my rearview mirror and could only see darkness as there were no street lamps out there. I used a trick where I tap my brakes softly enough to let the lights come on but don't actually slow down, and the red lit up the dust that was billowing in my wake. But amidst the swirling chaos, I thought that I saw a darker shadow than the rest. A tall, thin shadow. Well, I'd had enough, and I decided I was going to drive straight to the lighted roads and not let off the gas again the rest of the way, and no more looking back. I even ran a stop sign at the end of the road because I was not going to get caught by this thing if I could help it. I took a right onto the highway and just flew home, and I might have been relieved to get pulled over, but I didn't. When I got home, no one was awake, and I was pretty trusted to come home on time, so I called my boyfriend and cried to him for a long time before I was able to explain everything. He was dismissive and thought that I was just pulling a joke on him, and then he thought that I was just being crazy and seeing things. There's many reasons we didn't stay together, but his insensitivity contributed for sure. So, week 3 rolls around, and I refused to take my shortcut anymore, and he'd been making fun of me about it all week. One of the days, we went to a park to walk around, and on the way back, he decided that he wanted to drive by the house where I saw the thing. I was hysterical, begging him not to drive there, but he would not be dissuaded, so as we got closer and I couldn't stop him, I leaned my passenger side seat all the way back and pulled myself down, cowering in panic of getting near the place. I hid below the window and covered my eyes while panting heavily, reliving the traumatic night in my mind again. At one point, he stopped the car and said, "Whoa, you have to see this," he said. I whined no, resisting him pulling at my arm. "No, you really have to see this. Look," he said in a changed tone of astonishment. With tears in my eyes, I uncurled and slowly peeked over the rim of the window. And the house was gone. Burnt, clear down to the foundation with only a handful of framing beams still standing. The ground around the house was blackened in a perfect large circle. My boyfriend started to get out of the car and I shouted, "No, let's get out of here," while I grabbed for his arm, but he easily avoided me and got out. He walked around the ashy piles of the ruins for a bit, using a stick to poke at this and that, and when he finally came back, he had an intense look of thinking on his face. "This is weird. There's no furniture, no power wiring, or even interior walls. It doesn't seem like other burnt-out houses. Something's weird about this." When we finally got to his house, he searched for news articles about any house fires in the area, and there weren't any. He called the closest fire station and was quickly brushed off by the person that answered, as they didn't know about a fire there and didn't have time to find out before quickly hanging up on him. I never wanted to see the place again, and I went out of my way to avoid the roads in that area. But talking about it still makes my chest tighten a bit and my skin crawl and my eyes water. My brain still has trouble processing the whole thing, but I know what I saw. If you've ever heard or seen anything like this, then please let me know in the comment section below.